Warning: some contents may be disturbing. Viewer discretion is advised. So this isn't too creepy, but it creeps me the hell out. I'm a 21-year-old female, and my uncle is much older than me. He's around his early 40s, and he is the youngest out of my dad's siblings. He saw me from birth up until I was 9, and he was okay with me as a kid, and he never did anything creepy to me as far as I could remember. However, when my parents were together, my mother always warned me not to get too close to my uncle. When I was 9, I moved away with my mother to a completely different city up the north, and she told me things about him and my grandfather. It really made me feel gross hearing them. However, I can't lie, I doubt her, as she had a tendency to exaggerate every story she told. Little did I know how right she was. When I became 18, my dad's family and I all met up in a city at that time. It was great. I saw my cousin, who was a year older than me, and we all catched up on what I missed. I interacted with my uncle again too, and I was friendly with him, just like everyone else in the family though. I regret it now because he saw my fun side, and that somewhat motivated him to interact with me more, to bring that side of me out again. He looked much older and had grew a large gut and become almost bald. It had surprised me, as he looked like your average TikTok star when he was younger. That meeting was okay. However, he began to act strangely with me afterwards. He'd always managed to find ways to touch me, such as putting a finger under my neck or chin to turn my face suddenly towards him, like in a cheesy rom-com or something. It was not in the NSFW areas, but he was always so touchy, and this for me was already a yellow flag, as our culture is strict and men don't touch women at all, even in friendly manners. None of my other female relatives have behaved like that in the past, except kind of my grandfather. So he made me feel weird, and I had forgotten all of what my mother had told me about them. One time, a particular incident occurred when I was at my cousin's house and he was there too. My memory is hazy, but I remember that he whispered a question about why I am so shy. And he was so close to my neck when he said it, which made me have cold sweat. He wouldn't leave me alone and kept asking me questions, forcing me to interact. Another thing in our culture is that women are told to be hospitable and, well, not cause a scene, as it is extremely shameful, and the woman is blamed even for legitimate reasons. He would always pull childish expressions at me whenever I accidentally would make eye contact with him, and I noticed he always kept staring right at me. The conversations he had would try to include me in some way, and he would ask me questions about it, even though I tried to make myself look busy. I think once, after he had breathed on me, I caught him looking through my purse when I was away from it, and he noticed and quickly acted as if he was doing nothing suspicious. Near the end of the day, I was on the sofa looking behind it and petting my cousin's cat, and my uncle was leaving and wanting to say goodbye. I didn't think much of it, as he usually would say goodbye and then just leave. However, he grabbed me by the waist and pulled me towards him. It felt pretty violating, as I was practically cornered due to the positioning of the sofa and him, and he said some things that I couldn't remember, as it was overpowered by the feeling of disgust that I had towards him, and also the panic. What he was doing was not allowed in our culture. Men did not grab women by their waist, not even husbands with their wives. I tried pulling back, but he grabbed me harder, and it felt like he was feeling my waist even more, and it freaked me out. And afterwards, he let me go. and left. I turned around and saw that my dad had partly seen the ordeal. When we got home, I told him everything about what happened, and my dad told me that it was a good thing that I came to him about it, and that he will talk to my grandmother about it so he can set him straight. However, sadly, nothing like that happened. To be honest, I knew that he wouldn't take it seriously due to how backwards our culture is, and I couldn't tell my cousins or aunt because they were extremely conservative as well, very slut-shaming, and would certainly blame me for it and not my uncle. My dad instead always kept a distance between my uncle, and he wouldn't let my uncle in the house if he knew that I was in tops that were not completely modest, and told me not to open the door to him if I was home alone with my brother. My uncle is still creepy sometimes. He was recording a video of my little cousin's birthday like everyone else, but he spent some uncomfortable amount of time just filming me, and I was obviously uncomfortable. My dad did call me towards him and has kept me under his watch whenever my uncle is near. Once, my uncle had come over and knocked like a wild man for us to open the door late so he could deliver us some food that our grandmother made, and did the same thing to our cousins. My dad has told him that we wouldn't open the door for him if we were home alone, but my uncle wasn't happy about that. The weird thing is that he had just had a baby though, and mysteriously, his wife never meets us or interacts with us. I also don't know why he chases after me specifically. He doesn't act like this with my cousin at all, and I am no looker. I wish I had listened to my mother from the get-go and had just steered clear from him since day one of meeting him again. I really hope someday that I can get away from him because I think he's really creepy. And sadly, I don't think he will get what he truly deserves due to my misogynistic culture. Before I begin, I should state that this was a few years ago, and I'm a tiny woman. Back at this time, I looked like a teenager, so I've always been mindful that I seem an easier target or easier to fool. I had seen a job interview for a small business looking for a secretary, and no experience needed as they would provide on-the-job training. And as that's the kind of thing that I was looking for, I applied. I heard back quickly and I was invited to an interview. When I arrived, I was excited. It was a bit of a journey from my home, but it was in a beautiful old building on the 3rd floor with a modern layout inside, though you could tell that it was very new as it was bare bones and very little had been unpacked. Still though, if you have to work somewhere, might as well be in a nice building, right? Anyway, the interview seemed normal, and I only encountered female members of staff, and they were all warm and lovely. The woman interviewing me was amazing, and even sat talking to me for a while after, just getting to know me. When I get home, I wasn't in the door long before I got a phone call from them. I nailed the interview. Awesome, I thought, and I was offered the job. I was about to accept when I was told on the phone, "Okay, so you'll come here tomorrow and we'll have the van drive you to where you'll be working." And I was like, what? Confused about what they meant. Then they told me that I'd be meeting with the customers on their behalf, doing the talking, selling stuff, and etc. And I was not comfortable with this, as it wasn't what I was interviewed for, but I gave them the benefit of the doubt. Maybe they had a second position that they thought that I'd fit in better with. It wouldn't be that weird as a new company, and while I was not comfortable with it, I should try to hear them out. So I asked more questions, and the woman on the other end of the line is getting more snippy and tense. and the nice friendly woman from earlier was gone. She would not reveal where I would be going or who I would be meeting. And by this point, plenty of red flags were going off, so I said no thanks to her offer. For anyone curious about what happened after, I reported this, and it seemed very dodgy. But when they were checked in on, the floor was no longer occupied by them, and they'd apparently just rented it for a week, and then they were gone. So, to the people who interviewed me, let's not meet again. Back in 2013, I had just started on an education, and after the first school period, I had to go out and find an internship to be able to progress. But at that time, it proved to be almost impossible to get one. So while I was looking, I decided to take another job just to make sure that we had food on the table. After searching for a while, I found out a friend of my fiance's family had his own handicap bus company, a kind of taxi service for wheelchair users or otherwise disabled people, and he needed someone to cover the night shift since it was a bus that had to be on call at least 22 hours a day. Seeing that I'm quite the night owl, I immediately told him that I'd be happy to take the job, and after I got the needed license, I was hired. The job was pretty basic: pick up people and drop them off where they needed to go, and sometimes use a machine to get the wheelchairs up or down some stairs. And when there were no trips, I drove to a designated area and I did whatever while waiting. I quickly found a truck stop in the area where I could park and I could catch some sleep while I was waiting. There was a gas station where I could buy coffee in the early hours of the shift. And on the other side of the gas station's parking lot, on the opposite side of the truck stop, there was a run-down restaurant with a motel connected to it. To not disturb the sleeping truckers if I got a trip in the middle of the night, I just usually parked on the restaurant side. After parking there every night for a while, I noticed one particular room had a lot of people come and go. In the beginning, I thought nothing of it. But then one night in the end of the summer, while I was half asleep with the window slightly open, I suddenly hear yelling coming from the motel, and a dude came tumbling out of the room, and a few seconds later, a big dude came running after him with something in his hand, and I could not make out what it was. I thought that it was none of my business, and I just went back to my half-sleeping waiting stage. Not much time passed and my phone went off. I had a trip an hour's drive away, so I turned on the bus, and I was leaving the parking lot when I saw the big guy coming around the corner, and the rest of the night I had back-to-back trips, so I didn't park until I got home. The day after, I didn't get a return to home zone until 2 or 3 a.m. And when I arrived at the parking lot, the area where I used to park, it had fist-sized rocks strewn all over the place. Not connecting the dots at that time, I just parked a few spots over and I started waiting. I fell asleep pretty fast, but was jerked back into reality when a car right in front of my bus honked its horn, flashed the high beams, and revved its engines at me. I thought that it was just some idiot who noticed me sleeping and found it funny trying to make me shit myself. So I jumped out of the bus about to tell him to fuck off. But instead of driving off or stopping, the driver made the start brake thing with the car, indicating that I was the one who should fuck off. And then I connected the dots. Not wanting to seem like a pushover, I stood still and I stared at the car. Not that I could actually see anything with the high beams almost blinding me. And after what seemed like a really long time, but must not have been more than 30 seconds. The car then drove off. And after that, I decided to park near the trucks from then on. A month or so passed and nothing had happened since the car episode that I had, and I figured that nothing more would if I just kept parking by the trucks. But then one night, I had a long 12-hour shift on a Sunday, 6 p.m. to 6 a.m., and I didn't have time to eat dinner before work that day, and during the first half of my shift, I had back-to-back trips with no time to eat, so when I got a return-to-home zone, I quickly parked in the far end of the almost empty truck stop and then got ready to eat my now very late dinner that my fiancé packed for me. I wanted to watch some TV on my phone while I was eating, so I sat with my back against the driver's side door and I got very comfy. I was turning my back to the door and I accidentally hit the door lock with my elbow. But that was my luck. As I was sitting there scrolling through Netflix on my phone, I suddenly felt the bus rock and heard the clack of the door handle behind me smack back in position. I quickly turned and I saw a dude with a hood over his head quickly crouching and proceeding to lay down on the ground and crawling under the bus. Well, of course, with a big-ass kitchen knife in his right hand. I quickly got up and made sure the two other doors were locked, and then I looked in all directions to see if I could spot him. He was still under the bus and I was sure as hell not jumping out this time since the knife made his intentions pretty clear. I turned on the engine, turned on the spots on the back of the bus, and looked around to see if it had scared him off. And lucky for me, it did. I saw him run off and into a bushy or woody area at the end of the truck stop. And I never parked at that truck stop again after that night. And I also made sure that all doors were locked every time that I was parked. A little about me. I'm a personal trainer, and I share a space in an office that also has an acupuncturist and a chiropractor. Usually, they operate during the day, and I would go around 7 to 8 p.m. at night to work out and do some heavy lifting, so their clients don't have to hear metal clinking or banging in another room. As a preface, every once in a while, the door will unlock and the cleaning person will come in. The door will chime and they will clean and then leave. The family that cleans the building is Hispanic. Usually a taller man who is very nice will clean our office, and a woman, who I assume is his wife, will walk around with a trash bag and pick up the other buildings in the area. And tonight was the usual routine. Go to the office, drop off some paperwork, and squeeze in an evening workout. I'm putting away some stuff and printing off a few things when I hear the door unlock. The door is older and it makes a very distinct click sound when the key turns in it. The door chimes and a man comes in asking me in Spanish if he can come in. I don't speak Spanish, and he repeats in English. Can I come inside? Of course, I think it's one of the members of the family to come clean, and I say yes. It isn't until 10 minutes later, after I go to throw away something, I notice the trash is still there, and this man is just sitting in front of the door. I didn't want to be rude, but I didn't understand why that on the Sunday night at 8:30 p.m., this guy is just sitting here in the office alone with me. I text the chiropractor and I tell her what's going on, to which she calls me immediately and says, "You need to leave. There is a button on the alarm to notify the police. Do you want me to come over?" I tell her yes, and I grab my stuff and I approach the man. I tell him, I'm leaving for the night and I'm turning on the alarm, so you need to leave. He looks up at me, and then he shakes his head and says no very firmly. I freeze up, thankful that I still have someone on the phone. I say, why are you here? He mumbles something along the lines of, I am on probation. I tell him that the office isn't for probation, and in my mind, I am thinking, why would someone be reporting to an officer at 8:30 p.m. on a Sunday? The office is holistic. We have Buddhas and incense around, and it says Oriental medicine on the door. He then stands up and blocks the door. He starts asking what the office really is, and I tell him that it's for an acupuncturist and other specialties. As I type this, I wonder why he cared to know. It wasn't for probation. Why would he care so much to know what the office was? I wonder if I made a mistake in telling him. He then pulls out his phone and begins to scroll through it. He says he doesn't know the address and maybe I can help him, suggesting that I walk over to peer at his phone. I tell him that I can't help him and that he needs to leave. He scrolls for 5 minutes on his phone, and at this point, I'm hoping the Cairo will get here soon. He holds his phone up at me and shows me a random list of 20 to 30 addresses. I tell him, maybe what you're looking for is across the street, but not here. You need to leave. He seems hesitant to leave, but finally turns around and walks out slowly. And as soon as he gets outside, I lock the door. I guess it didn't matter, because this man somehow had a key and then got in. But I locked that door as soon as I could. It was only then that I noticed that there was a van parked in front of my car outside. This man gets in the passenger side, so he isn't alone. I decided to wait until the car leaves before I get in my own car. The way they were parked, it would only take them backing up 5 feet to box me into the space. The van is huge with suicide doors on the back, and it then proceeds to wait for 15 minutes before slowly pulling out. It stops in front of the office as if they are taking one last look at the building, and then slowly pulls off. I wait, and I noticed that they have only pulled up 50 feet just out of my sight. They are still there, and I can barely see the headlights. It's like they are waiting for something. And thankfully, the chiropractor pulled up in her car in time, and the van was gone. The whole experience was unreal. I can't seem to wrap my head around it. The fact that this man came in with a key and acted like he was there for probation doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make sense at all. The fact that he wanted to know what the office really was, and he blocked the door is also bizarre. A few weeks ago, when I was moving equipment into the space, I felt like I was being watched. I ended up burning some sage, and I thought maybe I was just paranoid about being in a new space at night. But now I'm wondering if there was something that I was picking up on and I just didn't know it yet. I will keep this updated as things progress. Hopefully, that man doesn't come back, and hopefully, we get a security camera installed and also the locks changed. So this happened at the end of summer 2021, and I was reminded because of Facebook memories. A little context: from ages 16 to 19, I was being abused by my ex and his mother, Monica. I lived with them because I was kicked out and she had power of attorney over me. Her name wasn't Monica. It was a super unique name that I haven't seen anyone else have before. It was a Friday night in the middle of a neighborhood filled with bars and clubs, so me and my fiancé wanted to go out. I got all dolled up and my fiancé went to the bar about 30 minutes before me, so he could grab some food from a pizza place near the bar. And once I finished getting dressed, I hopped out of my apartment and I started heading to the bar that was like 3 blocks away. I noticed a homeless woman outside my apartment, but I just shrugged it off. There were always homeless people in my neighborhood since it was downtown. And as I walked past her, I heard her turn and start walking behind me. It definitely creeped me out, but I assumed that she was just heading my way or was gonna ask me for some cig or maybe money. But no, what happened sent a shiver down my spine. "Monica? Monica!" the woman called to me in a raspy smoker's voice. I froze. I hadn't heard that name in years and I was terrified. I took a deep breath, assuming that she had confused me for someone, and it's a big coincidence, so I turned back to her and smiled. "Oh, sorry ma'am, I'm not Monica. I'm Lilac. Hope you find Monica though. Have a good night." And I turned to walk away. No, Monica. I know who you are," she said as she grabbed my shoulder and turned me towards her again. I was frozen in fear at this point and finally got a good look at her up close. She was probably in her early 60s, brown hair with grown-out gray roots. She had on multiple layers of coats and ripped scrub pants. But what was most noticeable was her eyes. They were dark and her pupils were so large that they almost engulfed the dark brown iris. Before I could respond, she looked deep into my eyes and said in a calm voice, "Are you ready to die tonight, Monica?" I instantly went into fight or flight mode and I smacked her hand off my shoulder and I turned to run to the bar, my hand in my purse on my pepper spray if she tried to follow me. She didn't. Instead, she just laughed and laughed. I could hear her laugh echo in my ears along with her question as I ran into the bar. I found my fiancé and just broke down sobbing. He calmed me down and got me a drink, then walked me home a couple of hours later to make sure that she wasn't there. The next morning, I heard from a neighbor that the sports bar across the street from the bar that I went to had a fatal shooting out front about 2 hours after I left. A man shot and killed 1 person and hurt 2 more. He was arrested 6 months later and was connected to another bar shooting a month prior where only 1 person was injured. The shooting seemed completely random, and I never saw that woman again, and I moved a few months later. Earlier, I was on my way to work, and I stopped into a nearby gas station to grab a drink and a snack. As I am approaching the drink area, there is a normal-looking guy. And by normal-looking, I mean that from my perspective, there was nothing off-putting about him, and he just looked like a nice person. And he was just standing there. I see that it's a visibly tight space between him and the fridge doors, so I say, "Excuse me," so that I could politely walk by towards the water that I was eyeing up. As I go past him, he says, "What do you think this is?" As someone who has a sense of humor, I thought he was joking or giving me a hard time, so I just laughed and proceeded to grab the water. But then I see him staring at me out of my peripheral vision. So I looked over, and he is giving me a blank, menacing stare. The smile was wiped off my face very quickly, and I said, "What?" out of confusion. He then continues to stare at me and just says, "Yeah," almost as if he was implying that he was telling me off or making a point or something. I just tried to ignore it and I proceeded to grab a snack. As he approaches the register to check out, I overhear him say to the cashier, "I feel like people are following me today." To which the cashier responds, Who?" And he then repeats, "I feel like people are following me today." I then get in line behind him, and he very much intentionally drops his license, his debit card, and some other card. They drop behind him towards me, and he then turns around and just looks at me. He looks down at the cards and then back up at me. He slowly bent down to pick them up while staring at me, and then proceeded to leave the gas station while looking back. I have no idea what I just experienced, but it was very unsettling. I didn't say anything negative to him, nor was I rude in any manner when I was trying to move by him in the gas station. I did not follow him whatsoever, nor did I give him any reason to drop his personal cards behind him towards me. So I am continuing to ask myself, why did this man act this way? And why did I feel such a menacing energy during my entire time in there? I don't expect anyone to give me a specific reason as to what I experienced, but I just really needed to share what happened. And here's the riddle for this video. Hello everyone, it's your creepy sister here. Thank you so much for watching the video. I really appreciate each and every one of you. But I would also like to thank my amazing patrons, my top tippers, and my dearest channel members. Thank you very, very much. I really appreciate it with all of my heart. If you want to support the channel further, you could also choose to become a patron, a tipper, or a channel member. But remember, it's appreciated, but never a requirement. I would also like to announce that we have merch now. The link is in the description of the video, along with all my other social media links, like my Discord server, Twitter, Instagram, and others. You can connect with me and send your stories there. And don't forget to like and subscribe if you haven't yet, and comments are highly appreciated. And remember, your fear feeds me.